The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. I suppose it's appropriate that this month of February that contains Valentine's Day is also Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. Tonight's guests have released a study indicating an extraordinary statistic that shows that in New York City, now get this, 1 in 10 teenagers reported experiencing physical or sexual violence in a dating relationship within the past year. Those numbers are particularly high in the Hispanic and Latino communities, apparently. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which, as you might expect, is the emergence of technology. Yes, the expanded, essentially universal use of cell phones. So tonight we examine the numbers, the causes, and some of the solutions to ramp down these numbers and make dating and relationships for Bronx young people less about violence and more about love. Please join me in welcoming two guests from an organization called Day One, a New York City-based not-for-profit that's leading the charge to combat intimate partner violence among teens and young adults. Its executive director, Stephanie Nilva. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
And also a social worker who works as a relationship abuse prevention program coordinator, that is R.A.P.P, R.A.P.P, and she works for Day One at the Marie Curie School for Medicine, Nursing, and Health Professions in the Bronx. Dilcia Erazo, nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let's start with you and just where are we at? The numbers are striking. Is this something that has never existed before? Has it been developing over a period of time? Give us an overall, and then we'll break it down and get some specifics.
Yeah, dating violence among youth is not new. This is something that's been around for a long time, but it has been and continues to be way below the radar. The statistic you mentioned earlier comes from the Department of Health, which does a national survey and indicates that 1 in 10 teenagers just within the last year report experiencing abuse from a dating partner. So if you were 17 and experienced it at 15, you don't show up in that study. My point is that one in 3 young people nationwide, and that statistic comes from the Department of Justice, have experienced dating abuse. It's very disturbing.
That is very disturbing. Yes, it's happened all through time, essentially. Why do we think? I mean, I held up my cell phone. There it is. Why do we think it's increasing now? Is it really just the cell phones? Is there something else out there?
I wouldn't say that. I think that what you see is that with increasing awareness, you get more reporting and more understanding, more resources that are going to be directed toward the issue. There's still woefully low amounts of resources directed at young people, but awareness increases reporting. So you have folks reaching out for help, more conversation. Everything from attention on college campuses to the Weinstein trial are going to cause people to recognize what they're experiencing or provide help maybe to someone else.
It is the challenge for all sexual assault data, because you say, well, are we having more incidents or are people just reporting them more? I guess there's no way to solve that ultimately.
I think we never know exactly. I don't think the rates are so much increasing. In fact, I think that more people are getting help, and that's a good thing. I do think that what technology has done has increased the, let's say, toolbox that people who are harming another person can use. So you can stalk and harass and invade the privacy of, or share inappropriately pictures.
And there's more opportunity, unfortunately, to do that because of what I'm holding in my hand.
Exactly. That and the internet, you'll see a lot more just venues for abusive behavior.
I was aware as we set up this program that we are three adults and we are not teens, and
Right.
I'm not speaking firsthand, but you can give us a little bit about what you see and hear from young people. Do they come to you? Do they say, "Hey, I got to find somebody to talk to"?
Yeah.
Do you have to draw them out? I mean, give me the on the ground picture of what's going on.
Yeah, there's definitely a mix. I mean, there are some students who will come, there's some young people who will come and are willingly and openly ready to share. And then there are some who are in the corner of the classroom struggling, and it takes a staff or it takes a peer educator who we work with also to bring that student to me and to be like, maybe you need someone to talk to.
Well, the next obvious question is, so what do they say? What do they say happened? What are the kinds of things that you hear? And you can be anecdotal, of course, without names and those
Yeah.
things. That's fine.
They definitely don't use the words like abusive relationship or abusive behaviors.
They don't recognize that.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
They don't have the language yet to be able to say this is what's happening to me. And so oftentimes for them, and social media plays a big role in that as well, because the toxic messages that we have as a society, when it comes to relationships, gets reflected on social media. And so there's a lot of messages that get sent that are unhealthy.
Give me an example. I'm pushing you, I know, but
yeah.
I think it's important for
Yeah.
people to really understand the mechanics of how this
Right.
works.
So I know one of my students who I've been working with for a while, she came to me and was like, I just shared this on my social media because I like related to it so much. And it was basically like, make sure you keep your partner on a leash because they might stray away. And so like that kind of messaging that we're sending, it's pretty toxic.
My instinct would tell me it's mostly young females that are coming forward. Are there incidents where it goes the other way, that guys and young boys and teen men are feeling the effects? Or is
Yeah.
it really, I mean, let's be honest, is it going in the direction against females?
I would say yes, the majority have been female. I'm also in a school where it's predominantly female students. I believe in other schools where there's more of a equal distribution, then like there seems to be more male students.
So you would see that more. And so somebody comes in and they say, "Hey, look, my boyfriend, somebody I went out with, somebody I was kind of friendly to, is now doing what? They're now telling me you have to go with me,"
Right.
or I mean, is that what we're getting?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, first it starts down on social media, like the messaging, and then they'll be like, can I get your cell phone number? And then they'll say, can I get your class schedule? Or like, where can we meet? And then,
So it's really intrusive. It's not like, hey, of course, you go meet somebody and you say,
Yeah.
"Hey, can I have your phone number?" You're saying
Right.
it's, wait a minute, because I have this device, you can give me, and all that data is out there, your class schedule, where you live, I could potentially follow you home, and all of a sudden it starts to get creepy.
there's also a lot of like sharing your location and like stories on social media. So there's a lot of like, I'm right now, somewhere like in the
FaceTime,
neighborhood.
right there. Hey, here
Right.
I am. I'm in the store. Here's
Yes,
so and so.
there's a lot of FaceTime and the person shows up.
Oh, and the person shows up.
Yeah.
Oh, that is
There are
creepy.
situations where sometimes.
So from kind of an administrator point of view, when you hear these kinds of stories, then, and this is essentially what Day One has done, what kinds of programs have you put into place to say, wait a minute, we've got to address this and figure this out?
Right. So what's I think particularly exciting about what the work that Day One does is that it's a combination of prevention and direct services. So we're seeing about 25,000 young people and adults in training programs and workshops and classrooms. So Dilcia, as a social worker, is delivering preventive classes and also delivering counseling in a high school. We also have educators that go to many different high schools. In the office, we also have attorneys and social workers who are going to see clients who have experienced harm in their relationships already. And then we also train peer leaders so that young people can speak directly to each other about the risks and the risks of dating violence, of technology abuse, and also help them.
I'm frankly just listening to what you're saying. I'm just so concerned that maybe the students are not receptive, and also really that the schools who are so pressured to use every minute so that students can, of course, achieve on tests and other pressures they all have, and they're going to say, I understand the problem, but we can't do it here because I got to improve my math scores. I mean,
Yeah.
do you find that?
We're particularly proud of our
Ms.
school.
Erazo is shaking
Yes.
her head. Yes. So
I mean, we're
I guess my
particularly,
answer is yes.
Our school partners, we're particularly excited and proud of them for making the space literally physical
You have
space.
2 in the Bronx.
Yes, and then we have 8 citywide.
Right, you keep going. I've got the names of the schools. So
Yeah, so we have, we're in 8 different schools, and of course that makes a difference when young people are reluctant to come forward and they get to know the people that are placed in the schools, like Dilcia, and they see her in a classroom periodically. And so that really makes a difference. And teachers also get to know us, and then they're more likely to refer a student.
The other school, by the way, in addition to the Marie Curie School, I have it, is the Health Opportunities High School.
Yeah.
So when you sit in a class, what do you do? What do you do? I mean, you say, it's almost like the old sex education classes. This is what it's like. What do? Do you set up little confrontational things? I mean, how does it work?
Well, it varies by R.A.P.P coordinator, but definitely as at day one, we like to be very informed by the students, and so we like to hear their feedback on what they want to see and what they want us, would like for us to do. They love
Do
role
they
plays.
talk firsthand with in that area? Say, hey, wait a minute, this is what happened to me.
Yeah,
They do.
They definitely do. We have the 3 core workshops that we do, which is the healthy relationships, consent and coercion, and then intimate partner violence. And so
there is a curriculum of
right,
sorts.
there's definitely a curriculum, and the aim is to really help them to learn what are some patterns of destructive behaviors that then can transition onto like their adult relationships. And so we do a lot of like just role plays, back and forth conversation.
Do you see results? Like, in other words, after the 3rd session, all of a sudden people are like, young people are nicer to each other? I'm hoping the answer is yes. Would that be nice?
I mean, I would love to say yes. I do think that, especially for the peer leaders who work very close with us and they really understand the work at a deeper level because they do the summer program with us as well, they definitely reach out to their peers when they see something in a certain behavior or certain effect, a toll that is taken on their fellow classmates, and they've taken the initiative to bring them to me if they feel like this person might need more support. I definitely think that as time has gone by, the students learn to at least be able to say like, this might be happening to me,
And find somebody to talk to. That would be
Right.
the first thing, whether it be parent or
Exactly.
Which really brings up this idea of, because I mentioned sex education. When I was a high school student, that's where we would get it. There's a bill now that you folks are supporting in the state legislature. Why don't we talk about that?
Sure. So Day One's preventive education has always been in middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And in 2017, we actually started focusing on a K through 5 age group because we want
K through 5.
K through 5. We really want to be able to. You heard Dilcia earlier talk about lacking the language to talk about these issues. But if we can talk to children at the youngest ages about boundaries, consent, teach them to say, I don't want you to sit next to me. Can I hold your hand? Then that language becomes normalized in their dating years. So the bill that has been introduced in the last few years in Albany by Assemblymember Nolan would mandate age-appropriate healthy relationships education in kindergarten through 12th grade. So you would have conversations starting at those early ages about how do you build healthy friendships, which translates as you get older immediately into how you're going to approach a dating relationship.
Do you have a sense of the possibilities? Again, I know what's going on in the schools, and the schools are going to say, hey, that's nice, but that's why we don't do sex education regularly in so many schools now anyway. Do you feel like it has a chance, or you just keep going till you get it?
I think it does. I think that New York State has really pushed some cutting-edge issues over the last several years. We put out what was called the Enough is Enough law a few years ago that shifted to affirmative consent on college campuses, and Governor Cuomo moved that first into the public schools at the college level, and then also to all of the schools. And I think that we have shown the track record where we could bring that sort of innovative prevention forward.
We've talked about, you mentioned K through 5 and starting young people younger. The cycle of violence, the cycle of domestic violence, there's this terrible story that happened in the Bronx that a 20-year-old woman was hacked up with a machete by an abusive boyfriend who hung around. On that level, it's an extension of what might have happened in the teen years. on a larger level, maybe that young man grew up in a home where this, was the norm, and that one of the reasons these things are happening is because of this cycle. I mean, there's some truth to what I'm saying,
Yes.
and then how do you intercede in there, or is what, for instance, Ms. Erazo was doing the way to do it? I asked you a long question.
That's
there.
okay. I'm with you. So I want to throw out another statistic, which is that the most intimate partner violence happens between the ages of 16 and 24. And that is because young people have less experience in relationships. These may be their first relationships. So they don't necessarily, again, have the language or the tools or skills or the exposure to healthy relationships to identify those practices early. So you've identified a case where this woman was, it appears, harmed by her partner, her ex-partner, which is the most dangerous time to be in a relationship when you're leaving, and at 20 years old. So that relationship had been going on for some time already. And yes, that person could have been in an abusive home, not necessarily, but could have been. And when you're exposed to abuse in your household, that increases statistically the likelihood that you're going to be a victim or a perpetrator of harm.
Sure. I mean, it's very logical. Do you have that sense that happens, that it's handed down from one generation to another? Do you, or because in a way, what I'm getting from both of you is that it's almost like being in the desert, and nobody has any experience whatsoever. Nobody's been taught what is appropriate or what's not appropriate, and part of that has got to come out of a family structure and in the home, if there is respect, or if a youngster, witnesses something between their parents or was just never taught. And I want to add one more thing, is the lack of fathers. If young men have no role models to see loving men necessarily, I don't want to say no, but fewer role models to see loving men. Anyway, do you see that in school?
I mean, there's a lot of factors that contribute to why someone would even be part of it or engage in it or be the person causing the harm, and so it's hard to necessarily pick one.
Okay, I accept that.
Can I?
And
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she
and
can finish,
also-
and then
of course.
we'll let you right in.
although I agree that there's a trauma that comes from witnessing it at home, and it's definitely probably one of the biggest impacts that it has. And I also know students who are under the radar. They're high performing in schools. They come from a household of both parents, and they happen to be one of the most
Wow.
incredible biggest.
So there are no rules.
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard to find something. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What were you going to add?
I really
about
just
that?
wanted to back up what, of course,
Yeah.
Dilcia said very well, which is that there is no rhyme or reason. You can't. People ask what to look out for, and you can look out for somebody who looks, insecure or nervous or is changing their behaviors, and other folks are just high performers in school, and so it's difficult to identify. And furthermore, we have definitely seen many clients over the years who come from the what you would call the ideal home,
Right.
stable
That's what we just heard,
families,
yeah.
well off, not the folks that you would expect in many different ways, and they are experiencing harm from someone because it's not about them specifically, it's about the person who's causing the harm.
Challenging, to say the least. Let's talk about this peer-to-peer thing that always interests me. When AIDS came about, and when the different levels of drug abuse that we've had in the Bronx, and gang violence and things like that, peer-to-peer counseling seems to work well. Talk about, because I know you're committed to it, talk about how you set it up and does it work?
Yeah, I think that Day One has been growing its youth leadership work because we know that young people are the experts in their own lives. They're the best folks to speak to directly one another. But I really would turn things over to Dilcia because
Okay.
she operates both in after school and in the summers programs for young people.
I just have the sense that if young people are talking to each other, it beats us getting involved.
100%.
Let them figure it out.
Yes, definitely in our Summer Peer Leadership Institute that we do, which is a 7-week program that we do.
And they get paid.
Yes, they get paid to be part of it, and it's sort of like
There's extra incentive.
space. Yeah, and that's usually where we see a lot of the boys coming in. We have a lot of boys that sign up for the Summer Peer Leadership Program, and
They do.
and
That
so-
encourages me.
yeah, and it opens up the space to really talk about it. The environment that we try to build is one where they are encouraged to really open up and learn and erase the shame and the guilt that they get from adults and from school environments, even from their own peers, because not everyone understands what they're going through. And so once they go through that summer program and we implement it into a school year, they work closely with the R.A.P.P coordinator to do awareness events. And for example, this month for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, my peer leader spoke at town hall, which is we have 4 town halls at our school. And so every grade gets a talk back.
And what is the subject of that? Then they sit there and somebody will say, hey, this happened to me, or if you see this happening to you, then, you know.
So I let the peer leaders, my peer educators, peer leaders, we let them pick the topics that they feel are happening the most. And so they were like social media and like red flags on like technology and social media. And so I let them take that on. And so they spoke about that with every grade, basically, like what are some red flags that we see on social media.
I could see, you know, just thinking, I suppose, from the, you know, the point of view of a youngster who's involved, especially a teen girl who, gee, I don't know, I kind of like this guy, but all of a sudden, there's something about this makes me feel uncomfortable. He's been asking me something on social media, again, the notion of sharing photographs, inappropriate photographs, all of a sudden, or I did do something and now I kind of regret it because I think it's, you know, I don't know where that picture has gone, you know, that kind of thing. I could see that being a real challenge because they don't know who to talk to. They don't know, you know, you talk to my friend, I mean, you know, right? I mean, and I'm assuming you try to present yourself as an expert or somebody they can come to.
We try to let them know that I'm someone they can come talk to in a very confidential setting, which is a lot for them. One of the main reasons why they don't look for help is because they're scared they're gonna tell their parents or get other people involved.
And presumably it's confidential.
Yeah. So when they come to me, it's confidential when it's about.
Do you have that feeling, which is a gratifying feeling for a professional, that somebody comes to you and they have a problem and you understand it, you know a little bit about what they're telling you, and then you help them help talk them out of it, or help them, you know, equip them
explore
to
more.
what to do?
Yeah, it's definitely.
I want to hear that happens, please.
I mean, it's definitely a gratifying feeling. Actually, last week, I was in my school for Career Day, and so I spoke about the work that I do. And afterwards, we had a conversation with some of the students that were there, and one of them, we were picking up cards with questions on them, and one of the questions was, name an adult that you feel safe with. And when the student was like, oh, that's easy, you, Ms. Erazo. And so I was like...
Well, you see, that's
right,
lovely,
so
but
it was a gratifying...
On the other hand, it does concern me because you wish it would be parents, but those things are very hard to talk with parents about.
Right.
I'm a parent, I know. As much as I would love to help. Let's talk about what's next and what you know, you as the administrator will look at the big picture, look at the numbers. What's next? What has to happen now? I know you've got the legislation out there. Are you on the right track? It's just doing more of this? I mean, what's on your mind for to lay it out?
I do think having K through 12 healthy relationships education in schools as a required topic would do wonders. I think you would see a long-term impact on folks that would be in safer relationships going forward. Once you start in that youngest age group, I also feel like you are going to interrupt cycles that include bullying, stranger sexual assault, workplace violence, etc., because again, you're equipping young people with a sense of other people's boundaries and their own. And again, the language to talk about it. So I think that is particularly important. I think for your viewers who are parents, you want to start these conversations early. You want to be building trust with young people at the earliest time so that when they are older and if they experience harm, maybe even if they're breaking the rules, they know they can still come to you and say, well, I wasn't supposed to be out, but this happened and I know you'll help me.
There's an instinct in me that says especially with girls, but on the other hand, maybe it's especially with the boys so that they don't behave that way. You want the girls to be able to identify it, but you want boys to say, hey, look, this is how you should be dating somebody, or if she says no, or if she's not really interested, then, you know, be cool, be smart.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about Day One is that our work on the prevention side has always been co-educational and sent the message that this can happen to young boys or young girls. And so you really send the message to youth. that you are free and welcome to come forward to talk about something, whether you're a young man being harmed by another young man, or you're in a same-sex relationship, or you're a young man being harmed by a young woman.
Right,
So we want to make sure that this is reaching all young people and that they don't feel any reluctance to come forward to talk about it.
Thank you for bringing that up. We're almost out of time, but talk to me about are issues different or more pronounced or exacerbated in an LGBT
The statistics
relationship?
are higher in LGBTQ
The statistics are higher.
relationships, and and a lot of times we do focus on male and women and heterosexual relationships.
And forget about that
exactly.
possibility, which
And the
certainly
reality
is
is,
prevalent.
it's right.
Which also brings up another thing, again, before we run out of time, about the Bronx. Now, the Bronx numbers have been disturbing, more so than other boroughs, for example. I guess you would know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
we're both, and
Yeah.
Dilcia is particularly aware. She's obviously here in a school every day. So the Bronx experiences a higher incidence rate as reported through police domestic incident reports. What's important to know about that, again, is that reporting does not always reflect the reality of how often something's happening. And when you have a community that experiences higher policing,
Yes.
you are going to see more reports, and that's going to indicate as if the occurrence rate is high. But I will tell you, this happens on the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side and Staten Island and everywhere else.
You know, there's a part of me that likes that idea, because I would like to think that if you're streetwise and you're a Bronx person, and then you say, hey, that crossed the line, I'm going to let somebody know, you know? And so I'd like to think it's not that the incidents are up here, but that the, that the reporting, in the sense of reporting. Final word then for you. Who should people talk to? Who should young people talk to if they say, you know what, number one, the boy says, did I do something wrong, or how should I behave if I really am attracted to a young lady? And also on the other side, if a girl says, you know what, this is no good, who do I talk to?
I mean, in an ideal world, it would be great if they could talk to an adult, any adult in the school
adult.
that would know how to respond to that, and then maybe make the referral to me if they feel like I would be the best person to support them with that.
In that school.
Right.
Also,
And outside would be the parents.
you know, a teacher that you have a good relationship with and say, hey, look, it's not about social studies or science, but I got to talk to somebody, right? Find an adult. Is that the bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, I think a trusted adult is going to be the best, well, certainly the most likely approach. You're going to go to the adult you trust, which is why everyone needs to know more about this issue and why we train all different adults in all sorts of professions.
For adults and others, how do they get to Day One? Just go to the website and through the contact?
Yep, Day1NY, alloutinletters.org, and you can find out a lot more information.
You guys are great. Day
Thank you so
One,
much.
Stephanie, Nilva, thank you so much for bringing Dilcia Erazo with you, and really for the great work you're doing, because to me, it's where the rubber meets the road. It's where we got to get our kids together, and as I said, less about hate and more about love, right?
Yeah, really knowing how to ask for help. In the
That's it.
Bronx.
In the BX. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Folks,
having
if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org. You can send us a tweet at BronxTalk or post them on our Facebook page. Now, next week, we sort out the latest and somewhat complicated issues regarding the Jerome Park Reservoir. That will be March 2nd. Then on March 9th, Senator Gustavo Rivera will be our guest to discuss what's going on in Albany as regards health reform and a range of other subjects as well. We thank our producer is Helen Greenberg. Our director is Richard Diaz. And you know what happens? We see you next week. Good night.